Okay, maybe first we introduce ourselves. I'm Hendrik Gaede. I work as a arborist specialized on fruit trees. So my job in winter is to prune old apple orchards. And I've done that for 10 years and realized, okay, there's a need for new crops and new systems. These old traditional agroforestry systems are not working, are not financially viable for a farmer. There has to be some new solutions. And there has to be some new type of trees because of climate change and the problems that showed from the trees I've planted from usual nurseries. After 10 years of working as these arborists specialized on fruit trees, I founded a nursery just by myself, and then 1 year later my partner joined.
I'm Franziska Wolpert, and I was grown on a farm and worked there a lot. And then I thought, okay, but farming as usual is not an option. So I studied nature conservation. And then I found out, okay, that's also not a solution. And we also have to feed people. So I came to Witzenhausen, where we live now. And now I work at the University of Kassel on organic agriculture. And my PhD is focused on agroforestry and tree crops and specialized on chestnuts too. And we have that nursery together. And now we start why we do that. So as you know, annual agriculture results in a lot of destruction, and there are a lot of people, they want to do it better than others do.
Like
and and most of them, they do annual agriculture but organic or the like. There's many things you can do better, but there's one main problem, and that's soil erosion. So from wind and water, if the field there's bare ground, bare soil, the best things of that soil, the most fertile, they vanish through the streams to the ocean. And that's the main problem. So today we have 10 to 40 times more soil erosion than soil regeneration worldwide on agricultural fields. And that's really huge, and that's a trend like that. If you continue, we have serious problems. We have famines worldwide, and we have war and so on. So it's not a question if we transform the food system, but how humankind looks like when we do that.
So this in mind, we thought about, okay, what could be a solution, a different way. And of course we found permaculture and food forests and agroforestry. But often in these systems, we found that you will not really fed by the system. It's fine to have some berries and some apples and pear and, play a little bit around with it. Yeah, like often in permaculture I see that, like in permaculture project. And at the end of the permaculture course day, we eat bread or pasta. So where does it come from? From annual agriculture, from plowed land, from destroyed land, from nearly deserts. So even in this project, they show us that really the things that power us, the carbohydrates, the potatoes, the grain, or the fat, that comes from annual agriculture still. And even these systems that destroy the planet and will lead into a chaos. So I still continued questioning where is the path that where there's a really solution for perennial and producing really food that feeds people and not just some apples or berries. So we looked which trees and shrubs really produce carbohydrates, oils, or even protein, which is quite difficult. With oil, it was quite clear. It's walnut, it's hazelnut, there are people caring about these cultures, these crops in many ways, but with carbohydrates, in Germany nobody was caring about this problem that we need carbohydrates to feed all these people, to find solutions for grain and stuff that is connected with destruction. So on my study, I studied forestry for 3 semesters and realized, okay, they're just planting trees for wood and not for food production. They have no idea what's possible there. I just looked into books and found a forest garden book, and there was written the sentence that changed my life, and they said there's no way why not chestnuts could be the new grain for the future, and instead of corn and stuff. So I thought about this, and as a tree guy, I thought, yeah, okay, why not bringing this tree into the agricultural world with my background as a kind of half forester. I've studied just 3 semesters because I ended that study to bring this tree into agroforestry or into agriculture.
Yeah, instead, there are many cultures that were based on chestnuts as a staple crop. So, for example, in the Mediterranean, there in Italy, in the Apennines or Corsica, and other places, they had chestnuts as a staple crop, and they roasted them. They made flour out of it, baked their breads, and it was really like a traditional thing. And each village has its own breedings and so on. And I studied that at university, and I found out that all that chestnut cultures vanished, and there were some problems, as it was not a lifestyle of modern way. But the most important thing was that there was the chestnut blight, which is a fungi, and that European chestnuts there were like they got that blight, that disease, and that they just somehow died and resprouted, but died before there was a real production again. So that was one main problem. But that's not the only thing. Like this chestnut culture was already like it's the oldest culture, cultivated plant we know that people did. So it was before we started cultivating grain. They had forest garden, lived there, and they really cultivated chestnuts already 15,500 years ago. So that's really amazing.
Yeah. So this culture what we're talking about is they call yomon, and that was in Japan. And so it was a Japanese chestnut. There are several types of chestnuts. At the archaeological sites there, they didn't find a single weapon, for example, which is quite interesting. They didn't find signs of war or fighting people or someone with an axe in the head or something like that. They didn't find that. And when they looked the site, they found chestnuts a lot, or walnuts, and so that they realized that their whole system was a food forest, and that for thousands of years they are living there peacefully in villages, but they were not just these wild people in the forest that just live there, like you imagine a tribe in the forest, and that was really a high culture. They had ceramic, they had a social system like ours, so it was really a high culture, which was based on chestnuts as a main food crop. So that's the thing that we want to talk to you. The message is not new. It's older than annual agriculture. It's like learning from before we stepped into this path, where at the end we are now, and that's not going further.
The path of destruction.
The path of destruction, yeah. It's we have to stop look back and learn from this, take the good part from today, combine it with a very, very old one, and comes to food forest, with a focus on things that really feed you. So not just berries and apples, as I said. So coming back to this, so the chestnut. There is a Japanese chestnut where this old breeding work is done. There is a European chestnut with as he said, in Italy and France and so. And there is this disease. This disease comes from Asia. So it's interesting that the Asian or the Chinese or the Japanese chestnut is resistant against this disease. So why not cross the European with these Japanese chestnuts to get the resistance against this disease? And that's what they did 50 years ago when this disease arrived here. They crossed the chestnut with the Japanese chestnut, and these hybrids of these crossings, they were resistant. They were smaller than the European, which is sad because we want to have a smaller tree. I'm talking about the size of the tree at the moment. So the tree becomes smaller when you cross with the Japanese, but the fruit size get bigger because you have 15,500 years of breeding work done with this crop. And that's the reason why if you plant a seed that has genetics from the Japanese in it, it continues to have good quality, so big nuts. So it's not really important to plant grafted varieties. Seedlings are doing good also. I don't know what happens, but it will become a good one. But it's not like in apples where you have to plant 100 apple kernels to get one good variety. It's more like, I don't know, 90% as good. Yeah. So that's the reason why if we want to base our staple food crop, like the alternative to grain, if you want to base that on a tree, we cannot use just 10 varieties that were bred in the 50 years or even 30. Yeah. So we need to produce more varieties or more like population breeding, where you sow chestnuts in the thousands and work with these seedlings instead of the full landscape full of just 10 cultivars. That's not biodiversity. That's too narrow. The genetic material is too less. So that's why we started as a nursery to plant seedlings instead of grafted cultivars, which is totally unusual in Europe. If you look into Asia or the US, it's quite common to plant seedlings, because the history with these diseases there is much longer. So they've learned that in the long run, just having 10 cultivars is not enough to have a resistant system to produce when the new strains of the disease come in the region. So diversity again. Yeah, you have to spread the genetics. This is the chestnut genetic part, but if you look into nursery trees, there is another thing that you have to realize.
There's no reason why not planting chestnuts on a landscape scale. And if we want to feed people, then it's really nice to integrate it in food forests. But if we want also farmers to start growing perennial stable crop, then the systems have to be a bit more structured and a bit more easier, not so diverse. So, for example, if you plant 100 chestnuts on an hectare, then you can have, like, after 5 years the production starts, and after 10 years you have really a good yield, and after 15 years it's the highest yield. So you have about 25 kilogram per tree, and then if you have 100 trees, you can sell that for, in Germany it's about 10 euro per kilogram fresh market, but if you roast it, it's much more expensive. So you can sell these and for 25,000 euro per hectare. So for a farmer who relies on subsidies at the moment, it's it needs some time, but in between he can have his cows underneath or cropping annual, and then step by step going into the perennial yields. And now I come back to the root system. So what we experienced is that all the trees you can buy in a tree nursery, they have really bad root system, really big shoots and small roots, and they put a lot of fertilizer and it looks really nice, and you have a big tree, but then you plant it, and next year you have to water a lot, and next year it's maybe same size, a bit higher, and then next year it really takes a lot of time to establish, and that's a problem. The shoot is much too big it's too big to be fed by that root. So what we do is selling small shoots with big roots. So we have our chestnuts in at least 45 centimeter pots or 90 centimeters. So they already have they do that 90 centimeters taproot in half a year, and they really need it to be drought tolerant. So this tree is going to be much more drought tolerant than other trees, as they have that taproot.
We have tested that on our land. We have 2.5 hectares. 1.5 is our own, and 1 hectare is with a group of people who want to establish a forest garden. And we've tested it with the deep root chestnuts in the drought year 2 years ago. I think you all remember that. It was heavy. And I've never watered these chestnuts just to see what happens. And they all survived without problem because they had 90 centimeter taproot. Yeah, so they don't need the water in the top. They can live even the first year without watering for half a year, and it's not waiting for every year. It was crazy. So it really shows that having these small trees with big, deep taproot systems is really a good thing if you want to establish a whole landscape. I mean, if you have a garden, it's no problem to stand there every day and water them. Okay, yeah, you can do that. But if you imagine we have to change the whole agricultural land on Earth into perennial systems, then it's a different story. You need trees that are drought tolerant, that care for themselves. And all these nurseries that chop down the taproot after 1 year to make it easy to plant for the customer and make it easy to handle for the nurseryman, yeah, it's a problem. They sell trees that will never be drought tolerant so fast that then if you leave this taproot. So we designed these containers. We looked around what can we use, and we found this forest guard where the deer browsed. You know what I mean? These plastic. It's made of. You can fold it together, and then it's a square tube like this, 90 or even higher. And maybe you see them around the forest, and they put them around the trees to protect them that the deer does not eat the leaves and these containers. Because I worked in the forestry, I know them and thought, okay, why not use them? And a friend of mine tested them, and it works quite well. And so I said, yeah, why not use them in general for these containers? And then we tried it, and it worked really good. And we tried it with 90 centimeter, and the first year we had different systems where there's water on the bottom, and that now we changed into air pruning. Maybe you've heard about this. It's that normally when you have a pot and the root goes down, and then it meets the bottom of the pot. Yeah, make like this. It hits the bottom, and then it goes through the side because it wants to go deeper. But in a round pot with no holes in it, it just goes like that. Maybe you've planted and you know what I'm talking about. And if you plant something like this, it will not grow very well. It will strangle itself and will not really go deep. And yeah, with these problems, It's normally you can buy trees like that, but in our system, or in some nurseries, they use air pruning, which is like a grid. When the root comes here, it goes here into here, and then it meets some air because there's some air under the pot, and that stops the root from growing deeper. And the energy is still pumped into this root, but the root sends the signal back: we cannot grow deeper. So the energy is stucking into this root, and all the root system at the end and a little bit further, a little bit before, they starts to produce small roots to the side, and then they go to the side, meet the bottom, and go down again. And the same process starts with the small roots. So at the end you have a container that's full of roots that all pointing down to produce. If you plant these trees, the tree realizes, okay, whoa, there is no soil, there is no air anymore. Now I can continue growing into deeper soil areas. We use these 90 centimeter taproot containers and use air pruning. So it's like combining both systems and end up with a tree that is already drought tolerant, but also can continue growing deeper into deeper areas. No, the containers on the side is closed, so that they go to this. There's one side where they fold together, and normally they go to this and go down and be air pruned again. No, it's not open. It's there are some holes on the side, but usually it's closed on the. It's like a small greenhouse, maybe. Yeah, there's the same effect. So at the end, when we sell these trees to customers, farmers, and people who want to plant an orchard, they can use these tubes to protect their trees. Though there is no plastic at the end, a pile of plastic pots where they usually throw away. So we end up with a product that's you can use everything. You don't have to buy these tubes. The tubes can be used that the rabbits don't eat the tree, and it grows faster because these tubes collect water from the morning. What was the dew? Yeah.
So yeah, in our tree nursery we have like that 45 centimeter pots too, besides that 90, as some soil are not that deep enough to have that 90 centimeters. So we also have that other ones. And we have that seedlings from the best hybrids crossed from the European and of the Japanese, as the Japanese has that drought tolerance, the Japanese has that disease tolerance, and the European has more drought tolerance, and so we use that hybrids, like the seedlings of that hybrids. Yeah, and beside the chestnuts we also sell frost-tolerant figs and some other interesting species we starting with, like mulberry or for proteins, or hazelnut and others. For example, Eleagnus, Ölweide in German. That's nitrogen fixing, and you can eat the berries, which is closely related to sea buckthorn, and very delicious and very healthy.
This Eleagnus thing, I just have to explain, because I was kind of saying something against berries. There's nothing wrong with berries, but with the Eleagnus, it's quite interesting because there was some research done in the US with these Eleagnus. Because it fixed nitrogen, they planted it into walnut orchards. And the interesting thing is that these walnuts tend to grow 70% faster than without these nitrogen-fixing berry shrubs. And in walnut, it's a big thing that you come in production very fast, because a walnut needs 10, 15 years to come in good production. And when you speed up these projects for this process for 70%, you are the winner in the game compared to the other farmers who don't have these nitrogen fixing extra growth. Yeah. So it's quite interesting shrub, and that's the reason why I collect all these varieties. It's kind of my hobby. And we always used to say plant some of these nitrogen fixing plants enough in your system, because if you really want to harvest a lot in your food forest, in your agroforestry system, in your fruit plantation, these nitrogen fixing trees really boost your system. And it really makes a big difference. And you also have, for example, the alnus, these alders, yeah. Maybe you know what I mean. These nitrogen fixing big trees. So look into that. It's Alnus cordate, for example, or Alnus glutinosa. So look into these nitrogen fixing plants also to combine into your systems, because that really speeds it up. Yeah.
The good thing is also that if there is enough nitrogen, they won't produce more, so it's not leaching into the groundwater.
Yeah, so I think that's mainly it. If you have some question, we can have question and answer thing, and if you want to order trees, we are open for that. We have 4,000 left this year because the season just starts, and last year we were sold out immediately, but we had just 1,000, so it was. The question was I have to repeat that they said it. The question is if there is a problem with gallwasp. There was a serious problem with it, but then luckily the opponent, in Asia there is an opponent of this gallwasp who parasites the gallwasp, appears just by himself, and then after 3 years there's no problem with gallwasp anymore. So what was it, yesterday or the day before, we heard that in one forest garden they had the same problem. It was in Rotterdam. And they just had 1 year with failure because of gallwasp, and the tree looks very ugly for this year. And then the opponent appears, and it was no problem 1 year earlier. So it was quite happy to hear that, even for me, that this process seems to speed up, that the opponent appears quite there. The question was the size of the tree, and we the chestnut, because it has such a big seed. We don't have a seed with us, but it's really like this big. Yeah, it's not a small thing, and it's full. It's packed with energy, with carbohydrates, and the tree uses the seedling uses this energy to grow very fast in the first 3 months. So we have planted them in February when they germinated. We protected them from the frost that was there, which was quite a lot of energy put in with greenhouse and stuff. And then they grow up to 1.50 meters, 1.30 meters, this, in just several months. It was not, because the seed was so big. And we had some where the seed, because of we just get small seeds from one side, and they grow just like 30 centimeter or 40 centimeter. But don't make the conclusion that big seed make big trees. It's just in the first year. And the second year, the one with good genetics for big growth, maybe more European genetics in it, will speed up and become a very big tree, instead of the Bouche de Bertisac, for example, which it's one variety with very big seed, just becomes like the size of an apple tree. So maybe just say something more about spacing. These hybrids need maybe 10 by 10, that's around roughly. So you can plant them in your design as like big apple trees. Yeah, they have the same shape. They're round, But there's a difference. You don't have to prune these trees so much compared to an apple tree, which what I do all winter long, pruning apple tree in orchards, these big apple trees. You don't have to do that with chestnuts. There are some cuts you have to do, for example, to get a trunk, a serious trunk where you can walk underneath, or even prune them so high that the machinery can drive under it if you have a bigger system. Just continue.
Yeah, and also if you have twigs that are really in the angle that is too steep, then you have to cut them too, as if they grow thicker, then the wood will grow here too, and then they will press each other apart, and then it just will break down.
And there's one apple tree where it's happened already. Yeah, it was too steep. You see this ruined? That happens when you don't prune these very narrow branches. Often it's because the bird sits there, or has sit there and break the bud, the main bud on the top. Yeah, and when it's broken, it sprouts in all directions. And when you want to have one trunk, you have to select that you get one instead of two that destroy, or three even that destroy themselves. So looking into a landscape again, if we want to have a tree landscape, we have to choose trees that are easy to maintain. So not just planting the right tree with taproots, but also choose the trees that feeds the people and is easy to manage. Because if you have to prune a tree like an old apple tree, imagine that in the whole landscape, it's insane, the work that's been needed. So planting walnuts, planting hazel shrubs, planting chestnut tree, it's manageable. The amount of work that you need per hectare is totally fine for pruning.
And we don't want you to reduce your diversity in your forest garden, but we want you to tell others and do it on a landscape scale too.
And the landscape scale is different. We cannot have a landscape full of forest gardens. It would be nice. I would love that. But at the moment, I think we have not enough people understanding that is needed. So we need some people who change the actual system, agricultural system, go into this, out of the nice permaculture bubble, yeah, into the hard agriculture world, where there's these tough guys with big machinery and they don't care about fucking trees. Yeah, go out there, talk to them, show them the numbers. If they don't listen, plant your own kind of simple system that is very productive, that they can understand. Sorry for seeming that they're dumb, but often they are. So show them that it's financially viable, that you make more money with this system than they do with all this big machinery, and that you have a nice life with this chestnut plantation or with your diverse nut plantation, maybe, to not just plant chestnuts. And that changed the system, because that's what her research has shown, that if it's financially viable and if you can feed your family with it and make money with it, then it goes on and everyone else is doing it. And we see that every day, because we live in Witzenhausen, which is in the middle of Germany, and which is traditionally a cherry region. So someone 70 years ago started to plant cherry trees, and it was financially viable. Everybody had cherries.
Yeah, it's a nice start. It's a start, nice end. But and we have to eat, I know. But I want to add that, like, farmers are not stupid, but they have like their path dependencies and they're stuck in the systems and they have to finance their stuff. But we can help them to go step by step in the right direction.